Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer. Take a trip into the macabre world of goth modeling in the new millennium in this spooktacular Spinsterella story. Pick up your copy of Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Historical couples in crisis. One of my viewers wanted me to do another installment in the Historical Couples in Crisis series. And for this installment in the Historical Couples in Crisis series, I'm going to be talking about MTV reality stars Amber Portwood and her baby daddy Gary Shirley. Now, the first person I'm going to be talking about in this Historical Couples in Crisis video is Amber Portwood. Now, Amber Portwood was the star of several reality series, such as 16 and Pregnant, Teen Mom, and Marriage Boot Camp, and was the mother of two children who are now in the custody of their fathers. And Amber Portwood was on the road to becoming a woman in crisis ever since she was born into an extremely dysfunctional household where her mother and her father had serious issues. Now, Amber Portwood's parents, Sean Edward Portwood Sr. and Tanya Portwood, grew up to become a very dysfunctional couple stuck in a codependent relationship. And due to that codependent relationship those parents had, this is what led to Amber Portwood winding up on a road to becoming a woman in crisis as she grew up having bipolar disorder, and that bipolar disorder basically was further exacerbated by the toxic home environment that she grew up in with her parents. Now, Amber Portwood's father, Sean Edward Portwood Sr., was an alcoholic, and as an alcoholic, he basically looked to escape through a bottle. And as he looked to escape through a bottle as related to feeling overwhelmed by the whole home situation he had with the three children, and one of the children passed away. What happened with Sean Edward Portwood Sr. is that he possibly never really got over the death of his daughter, Candace Portwood, who died in infancy. And as that happened, the entire marriage started to deteriorate. And as the marriage started to deteriorate, it was falling apart all around her. And as the marriage was falling apart around her, what happened with Amber Portwood's parents is that the Sean Edward Portwood Sr. basically looked to escape through alcohol as related to coping with the passing of his daughter, I believe, and his wife basically looked to escape through going to work and looking to work for at a job. Both of the parents were basically coping with the death of this child, and as they were coping with the death of this child, they coped in ways that led to them not being there to meet the emotional needs of Amber. The mother was not there to provide structure for her daughter because she basically became emotionally unavailable because she was working so many hours at the job. And when it came to the father, he couldn't go out here and nurture his daughter. And since he could not nurture his daughter, what happened to her is that she wound up with nobody there to give her any sort of structure or guidance whatsoever. And this is basically, along with possibly the mother basically out here drinking as related to Amber Portwood. She might have drank while she was pregnant, maybe, or something like that. I don't know what happened as related to the chemical imbalance in Amber Portwood's brain, but she wound up having bipolar disorder, and that bipolar disorder, again, I'm going to say it once more, was exacerbated by its situation as related to her teen years because the mother basically feeling like she could not get any sort of comfort or consolation from her husband. She then was at work, and as she was at work in her early teens, she basically started having an affair to get her emotional needs met by another man outside of the family. And this is what led to Amber Portwood being seething and boiling in anger, simmering and boiling in anger and frustration because she didn't have anybody in the family to meet her needs during a vulnerable period of adolescence. And as she was in this situation, she felt powerless. And this is basically what led to Amber Portwood starting to have serious power issues, and looking to get control in relationships because she felt that her whole life was out of control. But the reason why her whole life was out of control is because her mother and her father possibly did not understand how to process the passing of her baby sister, and because they didn't know how to deal with the passing of the baby sister, this is what made the elder sister basically extremely unstable, and made her so unstable that she was out here looking not to be a helpmeet to a man, but looking to go out here and find a man to get power and control over, looking to get power and control because she felt powerless in her own home and felt the only way she could get stability in her home was to be the leader of that home, and that would be the way to keep things in order, is to be one who would take control over the home. That's what I believe started Amber Portwood's serious issues because of the issues she had in her childhood and her early teen years. And as she was out here in her teen years, again, she wasn't looking to have healthy relationships with guys because her home was further falling apart because her brother Sean decided to go into the military. And as Sean went into the military, what happened with Amber Portwood was she was left alone and basically wound up replicating the codependency she basically saw with her mother and her father by getting involved with Gary Shirley. Now, Gary Shirley in and of himself was a clingy, codependent beta male who was clinging to Sean Portwood, and as Sean left, he then looked to find somebody to cling to, and he found Amber Portwood, and Amber Portwood allowed him to be able to continue a codependent relationship with her with the benefit of sexual access when she dropped the skid mark jockey draws. And sadly, what happened with them as they started to have a relationship, a codependent boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, was she got with him not because she was interested in him as a man, but interested in him as a tool she could basically use to get her emotional security, because he was the only guy there who was, again, looking to cling to her because he was desperate to have somebody from that family to be with, because he was looking for stability from somebody like Sean, which makes me think about, Gary Shirley's sexual orientation. He's kind of suspect. But the whole thing is he got with Amber Portwood and got with her because it was basically a relationship of convenience, not of love. And as they got together in 2008, eventually what happened with Amber Portwood, and she got pregnant in 2008, and then she wound up gave birth to her daughter Leah. And as she gave birth to Leah, Gary Shirley, out of obligation, not love, got engaged to Amber Portwood, hoping to marry this woman. Unfortunately, what happened in that situation is that Amber Portwood's insecurities got the better of her, and as those insecurities got the better of her, she started to participate in domestic violence on Gary Shirley, taking out all of her frustrations as related to her dysfunctional home life, taking it all out on Gary, taking out all of her anger and frustration about her home life not being optimal and ideal, and taking out all of her anger and frustration on Gary Shirley. And all of this was documented on the reality show Teen Mom. It was basically documented on Teen Mom about all of the physical and emotional abuse that she inflicted on Gary Shirley, and inflicted all of this abuse on Gary Shirley because she basically was angry at her father and subconsciously took that anger on her father, on him, for not meeting her emotional needs and not being there for her, took it all out on him. Moreover, she took her anger out on Gary Shirley because she possibly did not want to get pregnant, but got pregnant because she was having sex with this guy in an inconvenience, just because she wanted to keep somebody there because she had no stability whatsoever. And this was exacerbated by her bipolar behavior, where she was basically, again, always looking to again be happy one minute and then mad the next, and would go berserk and continue to go berserk, again getting violent on on her boyfriend Gary Shirley. And Gary Shirley basically was dealing with Amber Portwood's attacks. And again, as this was going on, the MTV crew didn't report it. It didn't report it at all. And eventually, it was eventually reported, and then the police did their own investigation. And as they did their own investigation, domestic violence charges were put on Amber Portwood. And as those domestic violence were put on Amber Portwood, and they had video evidence of it, they looked to give her. She pleaded guilty to 2 counts of domestic battery and was given a 2-year suspended sentence on probation. But eventually, in 2011, she was found arrested for having drugs and taking drugs, because what a lot of bipolar people do in order to deal with their instability of their minds is they look to escape through drugs. I talk about this in depth in my book, The Woman Crisis, in the chapter Addiction and the Woman Crisis. And basically, like her father, Amber Portwood was dealing with addiction issues because she was overwhelmed by the instability of her mind that's related to her unstable brain chemistry, and feeling overwhelmed about being a mother and could not really handle being a mother. And things were so bad for Amber Portwood that after she was arrested for violating her probation for domestic violence and possession of drugs, she basically was given a 5-year sentence as related to rehab if she completed rehab, but still, again, would not go along with things, and eventually was sent to prison to serve her 5-year sentence, where she was made to, again, have to attend substance abuse counseling, and eventually also had to earn her GED. And eventually she managed, didn't have to do the 5-year sentence. She only had to do like 17, 18 months. And again, she was out here on drugs, and again, she eventually got sober. But after she got sober, eventually, again, her ex-boyfriend, Gary Shirley, basically wound up getting custody of his daughter, Leah, and then also got involved with another woman. And as he got involved with this other woman, he started having a relationship with her. And Amber Portwood basically, again, wound up in a serious situation as related to Gary Shirley, where he had gotten married, went out here, married another woman, and now she was seething because he was having a better relationship with her. But he was having a better relationship with her because this woman basically had mental health issues from the jump, such as bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder. This woman was not really fit to be a woman who would be considered for a relationship due to the serious issues that she had. I mean, this was a woman who went out here and again was out here addicted to drugs like marijuana and crack cocaine, and was basically, that was further exacerbating things as related to her domestic violence on Gary Shirley. Again, all of this was looking to escape from that whole situation that she had as related to all the frustration she had as related to that relationship. And as she was, again, looking to deal with things, again, as she was in jail, Gary Shirley went out here and, again, I believe married I don't think he married somebody else, but he got involved with somebody else. And as he got involved with somebody else, this basically was the thing that really upset her, and upset her because as he was out here and got married to Christina Anderson and had another daughter, eventually Gary wound up becoming a police officer. And as he became this police officer, then what happened with Amber Portwood was she was basically dealing with these issues and again seething with anger because the relationship between her and Gary had failed and never was going to work because it was a relationship of convenience and a codependent one. And eventually what happened was Amber Portwood went on to try to find another man to prey on in 2017. And she then got involved with this DJ, Andrew Glennon, who she met through a social networking site known as, she got on with Matt Bayer first. And again, Matt Bayer was an guy who she got involved with on the social networking site Twitter, which really shows, again, what I talk about regarding online dating and meeting people online. Again, this woman was not really fit for a relationship, but she could go online and create a persona for herself. I go in depth on that in my book, Stop Simping in Cyberspace, how these women will go out here and create online personas. And that was the second boyfriend that she got involved with. Again, I don't think she got involved with him out of love, but inconvenience, because she basically saw that Gary Shirley had moved on, and got involved with Matt Bayer, this amateur DJ who was much older than she was. And as she got involved with this dude, again, it shows how she was not really mentally there and mentally fit to make decisions because of the bipolar and borderline personality disorder. I mean, this woman really did need some sort of supervision or some sort of counseling based on her erratic behavior. And as she went out here and got involved with this guy for 3 years, again, this was a man much older than she was. And then eventually she wound up picking a man who looked similar to Gary Shirley and Andrew Glennon, and then decided to get involved with him. And then she got involved with this guy. I think he was the son of a cameraman or something like that, Andrew Glennon, and basically got with him out of convenience once more because he was, again, part of that film crew, 4 of those MTV shows, and then got involved with him and had a son with him. And after she wound up having a son with him, her bipolar behavior came into prominence once more as she seethed about not having power in the relationship, because in a relationship a woman usually has to submit to a man. She usually has to submit to a man in a relationship, but she didn't want to give up that power. And basically Amber Portwood exploded in rage around 2019 when she was arrested for domestic battery and criminal recklessness with a deadly weapon after she attacked Mr. Glennon while he was holding his son in his arms, again holding him in his arms. She was threatening to kill herself by overdosing on clozapam and using a machete to break into the room. I mean, she basically went out here and went on a rampage. And as she went on this rampage, she was arrested. She did post bond, but eventually a restraining order was placed against her. And eventually she pleaded guilty to 2 counts of domestic battery and intimidation and was sentenced to 906 days on probation. And if she violates the probation, she will be put in jail for 5 years. But the whole thing is she wound up losing custody of her son, the same way she wound up losing custody of her daughter. And the reason why she wound up losing custody in both cases is because she was, again, mentally unstable. And the foundation for that mental instability is she did not want to submit to the leadership and authority of the men in her life, didn't want to submit to the authority of those men as related to their children, didn't want to submit and did not want to and could not submit because of the power issues that she has. Because with Amber Portwood, she's a woman who, again, fears that if she doesn't get her needs met by someone, if she doesn't do it herself, no one else will do it, and she doesn't trust any man to do it. So she looks to try to find weak, emasculated men to get involved with. She oftentimes has a pattern of picking beta males to try to get control over. Unfortunately, every time she tries to get control of them by inflicting abuse on those men quickly identify this very, very violent pattern of behavior. And what they do is have her get arrested. And that's very hard to do in this gynocentric society. But these men go out here and get domestic violence charges on her, get her put in jail. And what happens to Amber Portwood is she winds up in this pattern and paradigm of looking for weak men that she looks to get control over. She looks to get control over men because she doesn't trust anyone to be secure unless she can be the one in charge. She has a deep-seated insecurity about herself, a deep-seated insecurity in herself, and wants to be the center of attention. She has a lot of narcissism because she doesn't trust anyone at all, and doesn't trust anyone at all because she was not getting her needs met at an early age and had to take care of what she needed to do herself by herself. And she doesn't trust any man out here, and she looks to prey on weak men and get control over weak men. And that's what leads to her being a woman who is in crisis, and really seriously in crisis, and really is a serious person who's got deep-seated issues as related to herself. And she really does need to be in a mental health facility where she needs to get supervision. Unfortunately, due to her white privilege, what happened to Amber Portwood is she's the one who wants to be in control all the time, and that basically leads to her winding up in a paradigm of failure, similar to what I talk about in my book, Why 70% of Black Women Are Single, and why she's all by herself, all by herself, but she needs to be in a facility where she can get the care for her bipolar and borderline personality disorder. She's not the type of woman who any man should get involved with. She's not the type of woman that any man should really even consider getting involved with at all, because this woman has serious mental health issues and is not fit for a relationship as I see it. Not really fit for any sort of relationship. And any guy out here really needs to, again, not really think about being with this woman. Now, she wants to get joint custody of her kids, but I think her kids, when they enter adolescence, basically are going to see her for what she is. And sadly, she's in the same pattern that her mother was in. But her mother basically, again, escaped through an affair, and she takes out all of her anger on her mother. She believes that her mother is responsible for this entire situation. But what she doesn't see is that possibly what led to the fault, her parents falling apart, and basically their whole situation falling apart before her father died, was the passing of her baby sister. When her baby sister passed away, that entire relationship was possibly rickety, and what that caused was the thing that made the whole situation fall apart. And that basically, I believe, started the whole situation with Amber Portwood following into a vicious cycle that basically consumed her mother and led to her becoming a woman in crisis, and basically led to Amber Portwood herself becoming a woman in crisis. And both women, basically women in crisis, generation after generation, perpetuating a vicious cycle of dysfunction that's basically consumed this family and possibly won't stop until possibly somebody comes in and identifies the pattern. Now, the second person I'm going to be talking about in this historical couples in crisis video is Gary Shirley. Now, Gary Shirley was Amber Portwood's co-star on the reality show 16 and Pregnant and Teen Mom, and is the baby daddy of Amber Portwood's daughter Leah, and is also the father of another girl, Emily, who he had with his wife Christina Shirley, who he got involved with while she was married to another man. And basically, when it comes to Gary Shirley, he definitely fits the pattern and profile of a man in crisis, because Gary Shirley was one of these men who does not take the lead in relationships. Instead, he's one of these guys who basically looks to try to find codependent relationships with people due to the dysfunctional way he was raised. Now, Gary Shirley wound up on the road to becoming a man in crisis early on in his life, because he didn't know who his father was. And since he didn't know who his father was, this led to him having a foundation where he never learned how to develop male life skills or male survival skills, or see these skills modeled for him by a father. And instead of Gary Shirley learning how to be a leader as related to a relationship and learn how to be a steward of God's order, what happened with Gary Shirley is that he became a beta male, following behind female authority figures. And as he followed behind female authority figures, he never learned how to take the lead for himself, and instead wound up in a pattern of looking to follow behind women in a passive way. Now, with Gary Shirley, he's one of these guys who looks not to have healthy interdependent relationships with people where they have boundaries and they have lines of rules as related to engagement. No, with Gary Shirley, there are no rules. He basically just is one of these guys who goes out here and gloms on to people the way he did with Amber Portwood's brother, Sean. Amber Portwood's brother, Sean, I believe he had a codependent relationship with him where he became what I call a cling monster. And this guy basically was looking to cling to Sean in a codependent fashion, because Sean had some masculine traits, and that makes me believe that possibly this Gary Shirley might be sexually suspect. However, before he could ever manifest any of that, what happened is he found out that his friend Sean had gone into the Army, and as Sean had gone into the Army, he then looked to get involved with Amber Portwood in an effort to maintain the codependent relationship he had with that family. And as he looked to maintain that codependent relationship with the Portwood family, what happened is he brought his dysfunction into that family. And as he brought his dysfunction into that family, this is where he got involved with Amber Portwood, not because he liked Amber as a person, but because he wanted to have a substitute for Sean. And that's what I believe, again, that he possibly was suspect, because he wanted to have that relationship with Sean, but then got involved with Amber. But as he got involved with Amber, he got involved with a very toxic person, as he looked to, again, glom on to Amber, looked to glom on to Amber in a codependent fashion. And as he looked to have this boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, he was not the one running the relationship. No, the relationship was running him from day one, and running him from day one because what he was looking to do was run to find a substitute for his friend Sean. And as he looked to go out here and run to find that substitute, he wound up getting involved with a female predator who was looking for somebody to take out all of her anger and frustrations on, as related to her dysfunctional home life. Now, Amber Portwood was feeling powerless as related to her relationship with her mother, as she was having an affair with another man, and was angry about that. And she was also angry about her father, basically, again, becoming emotionally unavailable. And basically, while he was physically there, he was not emotionally engaged in the relationship, and eventually starting to have health problems. And again, she was angry about this, but didn't understand the root of everything that led to the death, was the passing of her baby sister, that basically, again, fractured those relationships. And what happened with this guy, Gary Shirley, basically, he's one of these soft, effeminate guys who are not in a position to lead. And that's what happened in this situation, is Amber Portwood saw that he wasn't fit to lead. And since he wasn't fit to lead, she took advantage of him, I believe, and possibly offered him sexual access as related to getting attention from this guy. And again, as she offered him sexual access and dropped the skid mark jockey draws and allowed him to get a taste of the atomic waste from the special place, he basically, after participating in nuclear fusion, eventually wound up getting this girl, Amber Portwood, pregnant. And that led to their relationship becoming even more toxic, because he now felt like he had an obligation to be with this woman. And again, the relationship never really started out on good terms where a woman was interested in him. No, they were basically, again, these two basically came together in a dysfunctional, codependent fashion. And as they came together in a very codependent fashion, this is where Amber took the power in the relationship and looked to take the power because she felt so powerless about her situation as related to her mother and father, and felt the only way for that relationship to work would be for her to be the one in charge. And as she felt she's the only one that needed to be in charge, what happened was she took control over the relationship. And as she took control over the relationship, as she was with him, as they were together, eventually this guy got engaged only on obligation, not out of love. You have to understand there's a difference between obligation and love. When a man gets involved with a woman out of love, he wants to be there. But when a man gets involved with a woman out of obligation, it's because he feels he has to be there. And again, obligation basically makes partners very resentful of each other. And that's what happened here with Amber Portwood. She felt resentful that she had to settle for Gary Shirley. And as she felt angry about having to settle for Gary Shirley, she was simmering and boiling in anger, and simmering and boiling in anger after Leah was born. And then she started to take out all of her anger and frustration on Gary Shirley. That's what she did as related to her relationship with Gary Shirley. She started taking out her frustrations, and the MTV staff basically sat there and watched as she inflicted domestic violence on Gary Shirley, over the course of their relationship. And as things escalated in that whole situation over 2 years, basically all what her Amber Portwood did was explode in rage, taking out all of her anger on Gary Shirley. as related to being frustrated about the state of her life and being forced to settle for this, what she believed possibly was a fat slob. And because he had, first he started out as a nursing assistant, then eventually wound up again trying to improve the quality of his life. But the whole problem is that, yeah, this guy, he knows how to, again, he goes out here and gets with women and doesn't take the lead in the relationship, doesn't take a role as a head, doesn't take a role as a steward, because he doesn't even know how to be a man. No, he's just a male that women just used, and that's what Amber Portwood was doing, using him as, again, a substitute for relationships like she was supposed to have with her father and her brother. Now, her brother basically left and joined the military and possibly never came back, and didn't come back because he saw the situation was toxic and wanted to move on with his life. But the whole thing is, as after he was the man that left this guy again to be a man in crisis as related to him, because he didn't know how to lead, and he followed behind this woman and followed behind her and started a pattern of following toxic people who were looking to prey on him and putting himself in the place where he could be preyed on. And that's what happened here with Gary Shirley. Now, that whole situation with Amber Portwood basically wound up falling completely apart. Again, falling completely apart as related to their relationship. And eventually the engagement did not go on. And after police arrested Amber Portwood as related to domestic violence charges and then later on drug charges, this is where Gary Shirley decided to move on. And as he moved on from one toxic woman to another toxic woman. And that's what happens with beta males, because a lot of these men don't really identify their pattern of behavior as related to relationships, and they don't recognize that they have a pattern of relationships that starts out in the beginning as codependent, and they start participating in codependent behavior, giving people power over their relationships. And instead of them taking the lead of that relationship, what they do is go into relationships looking to be led, because they have mommy issues and daddy issues. And that's basically what led to Gary Shirley going out here and getting involved with a married woman. He got involved with a married woman and then got involved with this woman, Christina Anderson, as she was married to another man. I mean, he went after Amber Portwood was sent to jail and prison for drugs and drug possession and domestic violence violations. He then decides to get involved with a married woman and gets involved with this woman as she was married to another man, and just shows that he has no ability to make good decisions, because he doesn't have the male life skill of critical thinking, the ability to use logic and reason and understand bad situations. I mean, he gets involved with a woman who's already married to another man, and then goes out here and doesn't understand that if she will cheat with you, she will cheat on you. That's what really was sad about this whole situation. I mean, this guy, Gary Shirley, again, he got involved with this woman, and Christina Anderson, and then he has a baby with her, has a second baby mama, and then this woman allegedly winds up cheating on Gary Shirley, and he basically wound up in this whole situation as related to things, because what he was doing is he does not know how to lead as a man, does not know how to think critically about who he's getting involved with, does not know how to how to be a man in things. Because what I saw over the course of Gary Shirley's interactions is that women wind up leading him, even his own daughters wind up leading him, and he does not run the relationship, relationships run him. But this is par for the course for beta males, because beta males don't know how to take their power as men. And the only place that Gary Shirley feels like he can take power is by being a police officer. I mean, that's what makes him a sad case. He only has power. The only power he has is in his job, and he goes there because it's the only place he can have his natural masculinity and have his natural, I believe, sexuality. And I don't know about his sexuality. It might be suspect, because again, He's not one of these guys who ever takes the lead. I mean, he's a very passive and weak man, and that's because he never had that father in his life, and because he never had that father in his life to teach him about how to be a man. He's a good father as related to providing for his children, but he does not provide a model of manhood because his daughters are basically running him. And that's the whole sad part about Gary Shirley. He's a guy who's been used all his life, never really actualized his potential as a man, and is still stuck up in a dysfunctional situation where he's just another man in crisis. Now, if you want to learn more about how to identify toxic women like Amber Portwood and identify the behaviors they participate in and why they are in the situation they're in, you can pick up my book, The Woman Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. And you can also, if you want to learn about beta males and their dysfunctional behavior, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com as well. And you can find both of these books at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And this was a video requested by one of my viewers, and if you want to request a video about a historical person in crisis, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App for a minimum of $15, and if I can do the research on that individual, I will make that video for you regarding a historical man in crisis, a historical woman in crisis, a Hollywood historical person in crisis, or a historical couple in crisis. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Esteemed Season of the Witch Girl. The aspiring angel takes on a wicked teenage witch in this action-packed, all-new Esteemed series adventure. Pick up your copy of Esteemed Season of the Witch Girl in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers today. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, A Thorn in My Side. The man who rules the world takes on an agent from the CIA, from the Black Boule, in this all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' A Thorn in My Side in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.